It's, like I said before, it's not a belief in a particular God, it's not belief in particular rituals, it's not about handing over your power to some higher deity who's going to manage everything for you. But it's giving a worldview which can be verified scientifically, and then giving attitudes and skills which can be learnt. I mean, they're consistent with the worldview, they can be learnt and practiced, and you can have ongoing tuition and coaching.
Can you tell us a bit about your work with the verification of yoga scientifically?
Scientifically,
yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of evidence that, see, I've started off with, I've explained how I'm seeing yoga. So then doubts come, is it a religion? No, it's not a religion. It doesn't fit into that framework, the religious framework. But then the mechanistic scientist will say that actually consciousness, even if it exists, and they're not quite sure whether it does exist, in any case, because the mechanistic scientists, they quote unquote know that everything is just physical laws. So that means that consciousness, it's non-physical, then it can't have any real effect in the physical world. It's got to be non-effective from their point of view. That point of view is clearly absurd, because video cameras, space shuttles, DVD players and like that, they can't organize themselves. Conscious beings do what matter can't do. It's amazing that that point of view hasn't been more strongly challenged. But it's there, everybody can see. That's the first thing. And then there's evidence, like, for example, Eccles I mentioned, from neurophysiological near-death experiences, where there was an investigation in Holland of people who'd been revived after heart attacks. So 12% of them had had very profound experiences, and many of them were able to see what was happening in the operating theatre, even though they were brain dead. They were completely dead. Heart wasn't working, brain wasn't working, no consciousness at all from a medical point of view. But they could see what was happening in the theatre, and even one or some of them were actually blind, and still they could see. And there's been a lot of work on that. Those are some practical demonstrations that consciousness is not just a physical phenomenon. Kurt Gödel, he produced his incompleteness theorem, which I don't know when that was, about 1960 maybe. And that proves that, in a general way, it proves that material science is incomplete. And specifically, it proves that material science can't look at itself, because the basis of that proof is a mathematical formulation of the statement, this statement is false. So when you get a reflexive statement like that, it doesn't work, and he proved that. So science is, the way they do it is they're always looking at outside objects. That's the whole thrust and emphasis. They only look at it's objective science. That's the criterion. But objective science, because it's looking outside, it can't look at itself. Like a telescope. If you look through a telescope, you don't see yourself. A knife can't cut itself. Pen can't write on itself. So science can't look at itself. The scientific process can't look at itself. So that means the scientific process, from a scientific point of view, is inconceivable. So what's the basis of the scientific process? Consciousness. It's a really simple way of understanding that consciousness is not physically understandable, but it's what drives the whole scientific process. So it's real. It's making a huge difference in the world. That's like the individual consciousness. Then you say, okay, we'll accept that, but this idea, there's some person out there. The physicists, they've calculated the probability that this universe could exist. And the odds against are 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123. It's an inconceivable number. If you wrote zeros on every atom and proton and electron in the universe, you still wouldn't work it out. So it means that, mathematically speaking, physically speaking, it's impossible that this universe exists. But it exists, here we are. So what is it that can perform miracles? It's a miracle. The fact that we're here is a miracle. What can perform miracles? Consciousness. This video camera, it's a miracle. So the universe is also a miracle. And there's so many other, for example, the way flocks and shoals and ants, groups of ants work. There's obviously a conscious organizing force. Creativity, scientific inspiration. Like mathematicians, for example, getting just in an instant. There was one mathematician, he was just getting on a bus, and he just got the proof to a whole extraordinarily abstract theorem that he'd previously been working on. He wasn't thinking at that time, and it just came into his mind. Now, no mechanistic process can give rise to an abstract solution. Creativity, there's so much work done now helping people to tune into their creativity. And the 12-step process for helping alcoholics, drug addicts, people with eating disorders, relationship with disorders and like that, that whole process depends on understanding I don't have the power, but if I open myself up to grace from my higher power, then it works, and it does work. It's effective where nothing else works. So there's so much scientific and experiential proof that, yes, consciousness is real on an individual basis, and it's non-physical, but it has a real effect in the universe. In fact, our whole Western world is based on the effect of consciousness on physical matter, rather than the other way around. And then there's so much evidence as well for the fact that there's a higher power, higher consciousness, organizing the universe, organizing relationships even. So there's a scientific basis for the idea that we as individual conscious entities can tune into that higher source of consciousness, of inspiration, of creativity. And if we think about that right there's a solution of so many problems. If we just open ourselves up instead of thinking, hey, no, I can handle this. That's the problem at the moment. We think we can handle it. With my brain and my senses, I can understand the world and how it works. That's crazy. Mm. It's like an ant living in a building thinking it's going to figure out how the building works and what these people are doing. We can't do it.